I've been seeing a recent story about a study conducted in the German city Stuttgart um, by the local utility, and they wanted to find out whether owners of battery electric vehicles would accept a slower or delayed overnight charge of their vehicles compared to a quick charging. And that sounded interesting to me because the trends, to the credit of Tesla and other manufacturers, is to reduce the time of charging for electric vehicles. Because that's one of the big annoying thing with battery electric vehicles is that you not only do they have a range issue most of the time because the battery is quite heavy. So the smaller the battery, of course, the lower your mileage is. And then you have to recharge the battery usually over hours, and with really good equipment you can maybe get a half charge in half an hour or something like that. But the trend is to try and minimize that downtime because that's a big disadvantage compared to a combustion engine that can just refuel within minutes. So I found this interesting. So why would utilities want EVs to charge slowly instead of quickly? And why would they want to control the charging periods? And this is one of the issues that we've been talking before when talking about battery electric vehicles. And that is that these additional power demand is putting stress on the whole system, on the power grid, right? So you're integrating the entire energy content that is quite right now in gasoline and diesel fuels in liquid fuel systems that you get on the gas station that will turn this entire energy content on the power grid. And what you need then is, of course, a lot more power generation capacity and also a better distribution system that can take all of this energy and distribute it to where it's needed. And that's, of course, a big problem because a lot of people will have to use their vehicles at the same time. So we know it as rush hour, right? So you need your vehicle ready at the same time, millions of people maybe in a big metropolitan area. And then everyone wants to have their electric vehicle charged at the same time. If you scale this up to millions of people, you will need many, many times over the electric power generation capacity. That's a big problem. And so this has been a very small study. There's another one in Norway. I think in the German study, there are only 10 participants in a relatively rich neighborhood. So I don't want to derive too much from it, but it shows that utilities recognize the problem. And so I've been thinking, what's the issue here? And the issue, I think, is that we are working in a framework of discussion where the government is, again, the central planner, picking and choosing certain technologies. So the government certainly wants battery electric vehicles on the roads instead of internal combustion engine vehicles or other technologies. And I think this is a particularly bad choice. So as I explained, the battery charging competes with the other grid users. So we use our electric power grid for our home appliances in the residential areas. We also need it for industry, for manufacturing, and so on. So there's a whole system that now gets disrupted if we were even able to scale up the use of battery electric vehicles. And again, shift this entire energy content from gasoline and diesel right now into the power grid. That's a huge issue. Then just scaling up the manufacturing of batteries is a big challenge, right? So we've talked about electric vehicles have something like 1% of 3% maybe of market shares, depending on the economy. And we are adding more and more internal combustion engine vehicles compared to battery electric vehicles. But even if we could add that many battery electric vehicles from consumer choice, producing that much battery capacity would be a problem. And then, of course, the government also wants solar and wind to feed the power into the batteries. And that, again, creates a need for even more batteries at a utility scale. So we will have to multiply many times over the battery production and manufacturing capacity. That makes it even more challenging. And So this is, in my view, unnecessarily difficult and expensive. And the charging during peak hours will drive cost even more, because the problem here is you will have to create a lot of peak power generation capacity that stands idle during other times. So particularly during the night where you don't need a lot of power. So you already see that in the conventional system, there are peaker plants and baseload plants. So the baseload plants produce a lot of kilowatt hours on a constant basis, very cheaply, and then the peaker plants come in when there's a peak demand, like a scorching hot summer day in Texas, where a lot of air conditioning comes online, and then you need some extra juice, and you buy this very expensively. And you will have this problem exacerbated many times over with peak charging times for electric vehicles, once many millions of them are on the roads, of course. And this is a general problem with the electrify everything to accommodate the solar and wind plan, because the only reason why we need to focus on or the government wants to focus on electricity, is because solar and wind only produce electricity. They don't produce gasoline, they don't produce any kind of other fuel. They produce electricity, and then the government thinks, oh yeah, we want everything to be electrified. The transportation sector, heating should be electrified, and so on and so forth. So this is putting a lot of stress on the very expensive power grid infrastructure. And this is sort of the dumbest choice of something. So I was thinking, yeah, if we wouldn't have the government centrally planning this, what would a private entrepreneur do or look for if he wants to optimize and provide an actually better system, right? With getting a better transport service, getting from A to B more efficiently, cheaper, more quickly, and so on. How would they create a better solution? And so my speculation would be they would do some kind of liquid fuel, because that's not electricity, that's not putting stress on the power grid and not driving up the cost in there. And so maybe synthesize some kind of fuel, like ammonia or hydrogen or something like that, right? Or maybe liquid natural gas would be a good solution. But probably not battery electric vehicles. So I think that's a niche product where, because the government chooses this for ideological reasons, because they want solar and wind, they want to electrify everything, and then electric cars look attractive even if they are not really competitive or economically viable. So, but that sort of solution seeking by a private entrepreneur would have the goal of creating a better product, and ultimately would lead to more traveling, more transport of goods, and so on. It would make the world better, more convenient, and doing more. And I think this runs counter to the actual green ideal behind government policies, which is minimize the footprint. Okay, if you want to minimize the footprint, you don't want transport to become cheaper. You don't want gasoline and diesel to be replaced by something superior that's actually making things cheaper. You're not looking for better solutions. You're looking for solutions that minimize the footprint. And ultimately, that will probably lead to something like, transporting less, traveling less, doing less, getting less mileage out of the car, and having fewer cars. So I think there's a very real reason why the government and these policies that are advocated systematically lead to worse solutions that can't really scale and can't really work, and make things ultimately more expensive. And that is, ideas matter, and horrible ideas like the minimizing the footprint framework matter as well.